Take it easy and solve the school lunch problem with SPAM. S-P-A-M.
こんにちは、タイガークローラジオ。You are listening now. Back J.
You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Number one in vintage computer and video game entertainment. And now your host, Critical Failure.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Tiger Claw Radio, episode 246. It's time once again, boys and girls, to talk about video games, collecting, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I hope you guys had a great weekend. This week we got a lot of great stuff. Got some good tunes coming up. I have a second TCTV channel. We have the end of Steam support on Windows XP. What else have we got? Lots of stuff. Alright, boys and girls, there's no time to waste. Let's jump right into it. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio, episode 246. Song with Night Lights from the Free the Music Volume 1 Synthwave compilation, which is available for free at your local internet. Just swing by your local internet and pick yourself up a copy. There's no time to waste, boys and girls, because Monday morning's Vancast was a tale I couldn't wait to tell. It's the tale of Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas. Stand by for the Vancast on Tiger Claw Radio. It's Monday morning, on my way to work, and 1 million people across the country right about now are saying I should be in bed right about now. But that's all right. We're doing what we can do. So I got quite a story for you from this past weekend. Let's turn back the clock a little bit. There is a place in the town where I grew up. We're going to call it Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas. Best chicken place around. Now, it's not much to look at, but you go into Tchotchke Charlie's, get a quarter chicken white with some coleslaw and some fries for like $3. Best deal in town, best food in town. It's been a part of my neighborhood as long as I can remember. And when my wife and I were dating, I took her to Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas quite a few times. It became like a place of ours. You know how we got our place. We got our place, we go to whatever restaurant. For us, it was Tchotchke Charlie's, this little hole-in-the-wall chicken place. And we really dug it, man. It's good stuff. So I still drive back to that neighborhood because my mom still lives there. And this past weekend, just yesterday, after church, loaded up the family. We drove down to Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas, and we got some food to bring over to my mom's house for like a Sunday afternoon, lunch. And we parked at Tchotchke Charlie's, and what should I see but an enormous local game store, like a D&D / Magic the Gathering type store, right across the freaking street from Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. Where was this store when I was growing up? I could have rode my bike over to the dice store, got some Magic cards, walked right across the street to Tchotchke Charlie's, got a quarter white and some fries and coleslaw, and I would have had a great evening, especially considering what Magic cards cost back then. I could have had a great evening for $5. But that's okay. It was cool to see something like that open up in my hometown. And even though I've got a local game store that's closer, I'm not super attached to my local game store now. So I might consider driving down there for my first Friday Night Magic, right across the street from Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas, where I can get a quarter white, fries and coleslaw for about $3. And that has been I couldn't go in there at that time because I had my wife and I had my kids, and now they had all this hot food, and we were on my way to my mom's house, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to go check out this place. So here I am off to work a day later on Monday morning, and it's all I can think about is a fresh pack of Magic cards, followed by a quarter white, a scoop of coleslaw, and french fries at Tchotchke Charlie's Chicken and Chimichangas. There's nothing I would like more in the world than that combo right now. So let's see. As far as video games are concerned, I've been playing Worms Armageddon with my kids. They like Worms Armageddon. Well, they like the Worms games, and Worms Armageddon in particular, because when I showed them the Worms series, that was the title we went with, because it's got everything unlocked. There's no DLC. It's all there. And I showed my kids the Soundbank editor for the first time. So if you only have Worms Armageddon on Steam, if you've never had the CD version, it used to be when you would install it into Windows and it would create the start menu. You know how it would create its own menu, and that would have the game, it would have the uninstall file, maybe a help file, and it also had a speech bank editor. So I opened up the native folder, right, in Steam. You can do that, right-click, properties, browse local files. Sure enough, it took a little rooting through subdirectories, but sure enough, there's the Soundbank editor. It's still there. And I showed that to my kids, and we started fooling around with it. And that's good fun. Kids like microphones. They like recording themselves making funny noises and playing it back. That's always a good childhood activity. I used to do that with my mother's tape recorder when I was a kid. The real first episodes of TCR were recorded on a cassette tape when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. So, I'm still technically in the middle of what I'm calling my deep dive. And just a quick refresher, this is the time where I'm trying to not spend money on video games. That's what I'm trying to do. Just dive into my collection, play things that haven't been played in a while, check out the backlog, play things that have never gotten played. Got a lot of really great games that have never gotten played. I'll give you an example. I've got BioShock and BioShock 2. Now, I don't have anything beyond that. I don't have BioShock Infinite, but BioShock and BioShock 2, both acclaimed games. Now, I've played probably about 1 hour of the original BioShock, and that's it. And even that was many, many years ago. Same thing with the Mass Effect series. I've got Mass Effect and Mass Effect 2. Probably played about an hour of the first one and called it. I gotta dig into one of those. And I had a couple of hours before work this morning, but rather than play video games, I reinstalled Morrowind, so I guess I did something with video games, but I spent most of that time looking for music. I went looking for synthwave albums and samplers and that sort of thing for potential future episodes of TCR and whatnot, which was good. That was a good time. So, I'm going to shift gears for a minute. Let's talk about a video game that's up and coming. I want to get your guys' opinion on it. Dead or Alive 6. DOA 6. Alright, I'm a fan of the DOA series. I like the fighting games. Now, I know they have this beach volleyball series, the dating sim kind of thing, but I dig the fighting games. I think the mechanics are simple, but I like the 3D fighting. They're good games. I've enjoyed them. It seems like DOA 6 is having a hard time gaining traction, because those have been fan service games as long as I can remember, right? A lot of exploitive models, a lot of exploitive art. That's the DOA series, is what it's sold itself on from the very beginning. But they're trying to tone that down in the new version. It still looks cool. It looks like a cool game if you watch the trailer, the little bit we have to look at. But they are trying to tone it down a little bit, which is what they want to do, I guess. And I guess because of that, they're having a hard time getting traction. They wanted, what was it? They had some sort of promo where they wanted to get 50 shares on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, and they couldn't get 50 people to share their promo. So we'll see. It's still going to be a DOA game, whatever they decide to do with it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the huge roster that DOA has could use a few more like ninjas, that sort of stuff. So I don't know. I'm on board. This is the 6th version, the 6th game in the franchise. So I'm not going to be naysaying yet. I hope they take the opportunity to do something unique with it, do something worthwhile. It's a new DOA game, and it's one of those things where it's like, I like the franchise, so I want to play the new game. You know what I mean? I know they're going to mess it up hard, not because of any ideological reason, not because of them wanting to be less revealing with the models, just because it's going to be the new game in a franchise I really, really dig, and I know it's not going to live up to whatever my expectations may be. So just make a competent game. As far as I'm concerned, if they make a game that's got a PC version and fully functional netcode, then I'm on board with whatever they got. You know what I mean? Just make it work online, because DOA 5 did not. Absolutely not. And what's funny is, even though DOA 5 is terrible to play online, there's still always a handful of people playing. Like, there's a few people who are like, I'm gonna try. I know it skips frames, but I can sort of adjust and play it anyway a little bit. That's DOA 5. In another piece of news, I have heard this rumor. I haven't logged onto my Origin account to check it out. But the rumor is that Origin, EA's Steam game service-like program. You're probably familiar with Origin if you've ever had any interest in SimCity 4 or The Sims 4 or the new SimCity that came out in 2013 or any of those things. Those all go through Origin. Origin is stopping its On the House program. They've had this program for the longest time where every 2 months they give away a game for free. You have to log on to the client and you click the On the House program and there's a game. If you don't already own it, you click the button and boom, you got it, and it's in your collection forever. I got a good number of games that way, and that program was something that kept me coming back to Origin even though I wasn't using it very much. The last year or so, they've all been like Bookworm or Peggle or that sort of thing, but I got Syndicate, the classic game Syndicate, off of that. I got Sims 2 Complete several years back. I got Command & Conquer Renegade. A few really good games, right? For free, that I have forever now. And it seems like they're letting that go. Now, I understand why. I mean, how long can you give something away for free and have it be feasible? But it seemed like it was doing so much good for the client as a whole. It got people who wouldn't otherwise use it to use it and log on. I mean, people who weren't interested in EA or Origin were now curating and maintaining collections, right? So that's something. And I did end up buying from them because I bought the Command & Conquer Complete set. I think that might have been the only thing I bought, but I bought the Command & Conquer Complete set when it was $5. So they did eventually get me as a customer, and it's because of their On the House program. So sorry to see that go. Again, I haven't logged on to my copy of Origin to confirm it yet, but I read that yesterday on the internet. So whenever I log on to Origin these days, it's usually to run the original Command & Conquer. The very, very first one, where when you built buildings, they had to touch each other, and that was how your base worked. That's my favorite one. Of all the Command & Conquer games, that's my favorite. Because it's because of the full motion video, right? The FMV sequences in the original Command & Conquer were still filmed in the Hollyweird era of video games, right? These old FMV-driven games like The 11th Hour and Seventh Guest and all that stuff. That's when Command & Conquer has its roots. Which is why they were able to like do such tongue-in-cheek stuff later on and have it work. So the first one, I like the cutscenes, and that's why I play it. That is my favorite one of the franchise, by a long shot. Alright, last thing. I don't know if I talked about this last week, but I recently actually sat down with Quake Champions for the first time. It's been, several days since this happened. This didn't happen over the weekend. This is like tail end of last week. But I installed Quake Champion, which is supposedly free to play, and I played it, and my opinion of that game, complete 180. I really dig that game now. I was apprehensive about Quake Champion because the idea of heroes, I felt like encroached on what Quake was. I thought Quake was a game where the playing field was always level and should be. And yeah, I guess that's true. But I played the game, actually installed it and ran it, and I really dig it. So here's the way it works. They do something kind of like League of Legends, where among the heroes, there's one that's free all the time, and that changes every week. But then everybody starts with the Ranger. That's the one you have permanently unlocked. And if you're going to give me one character from a Quake game, the Ranger is it. That's the one I wanted to play. The Ranger being the guy you play as in the original Quake. So I installed it. I'm playing Team Deathmatch with the Ranger, my old friend. and I was tearing it up. They actually did a really good job recapturing what made Quake fun. It's super fast, for one thing, and you can carry a whole bunch of weapons like you could in the old days, right? You can carry one of every weapon as long as you can stay alive. And there's little tiny things as well. Like I can hear sound bites from past games. Like when you hurt somebody, when you shoot and connect with someone, it plays a very specific sound that Quake 3 used to play. Right? If you ever played enough Quake 3 to remember the sound effect that it makes when you connect, it's a good game. It's a good game. I don't know if it merits spending any cash on at this point, but I've been playing it and collecting in-game points that can be spent for in-game items. So not a perfect game by any means. What is? But it was the rare instance of a free-to-play game that had something for me, and I feel like it didn't put all of the fun behind a paywall. There's fun there. Everybody can download that game and play it, and we can play together and have a good time, which is great. Which is great. You know? Even Deathmatch Classic costs, $5 or 99 cents when it's on sale. Speaking of Deathmatch Classic, one thing I think it's missing is it would have been nice to throw in at least one of the old Deathmatch maps, have it recreated in their engine, even if only partially. Like maybe they could take one of the original Deathmatch maps and then make it so that the building exploded, so only half of the map is there and the other half leads to a wide open area or something. I don't know. They could have got creative with it, but all of the levels, and they're okay levels, they're serviceable modern levels. All of the levels are new. There's nothing recognizable in the levels, which is a little unfortunate. But that's Quake Champions. Whew. Quake Champions and Dead by Daylight. I think those are the games I've actually been playing with my time when I sit down with a video game. Played some Dead by Daylight as well. And that's what I would play. This is how I like to end it. If I could just drop work and go home and play games, it would probably be Quake Champion, to be honest with you. Quake Champions. Because talking about it now reminded me how much I've been enjoying that game. And it's now been several days since I've played it, so I think that would be the game. And alright, boys and girls, I'm on the way to the office right now to do my Monday at work. I'm gonna walk in there and I'm gonna do what I gotta do, and I'm not gonna stop until it's all done. And I'll see you guys back in the studio on the other side.
And you know what? I went in and did my Monday and everything turned out fine. And now, boys and girls, it's time to give a quick thanks to those who are bringing this show back every single week. That's right, it's the patrons. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. And I like to give these guys a big thanks. For the patrons, I can only really provide a couple of things. They get early access to the podcast. As soon as it gets done, I put it up for the patrons. They get a copy. It's usually Friday or Saturday night. Monday for the masses. They also get access to the brand new monthly show called The After Party, which is a supporter-exclusive podcast that I do. And they also get their names read off in a hall of distinguished gentlemen. And they are Hemrock, James, Sendu, Tecmo Balls, Darabka, and the Cartridge Brothers. Thank you guys so much for bringing TCR back every single week. My goodness. Can you believe it's been 246 weeks?
Alright, I think this deserves a Captain's Log edition. I just passed a sign that says Corned Beef King. And it has captured my imagination. I'm waiting at an intersection right now to make a left turn. And right on the median, there's like a sign that's pointing the other way, like a street traffic sign. I can't see what it says. But there's one of those paper signs that's taped to it that says Corned Beef King. Now, I don't see a king anywhere, nor do I see any corned beef, much less a corned beef king, but I have to assume there's a food truck nearby. Thought I would share that with you because that captured my imagination.
Alright, this next track, also from Free the Music Volume 1 Synthwave. It's from John Liss. It's called It Still Hurts. This is a 4-minute track. It's a little bit longer than I tend to like to play here on TCR, but I'm really digging the synthwave right now. It's really hitting just the right spot. So let's go there. You ready? You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio.
It's the Vancast. What is it, Wednesday morning? Wednesday morning. I'm off to work, boys and girls. And last night when I got home, it was the first evening in a couple of weeks it hadn't been raining. It's been raining so much lately. So I got out to run, and I hadn't run in a while, so I could really feel it in my bones. But we're up and rolling now. I'm leaving for work, and my son got up this morning early so that we could hang out, which was pretty cool. We were talking last night and he wanted to play some Magic the Gathering. So I said, hey man, we're always out of time in the evening. Why don't you just wake up early in the morning, and then we'll have like a couple of hours, just you and me with nothing we got to take care of. So he was all about it. He was like, yeah. He went right to sleep. I was proud of him. And then when I woke up this morning, alarm went off at 5 or 4:10, which is usually 4:50. And then 5 o'clock I rolled out of bed and I opened the door and he was standing right there. He was standing right there. It startled me pretty bad. He must have heard my alarm and jumped out of bed before me, and then just got him and waited there for 10 minutes. So, he and I got up and played some Magic the Gathering for a couple of hours, which was pretty awesome. A no-holds-barred Magic the Gathering with a pool of decks from like 15 years ago. And in order to make it fair, all of the decks were up for grabs. If one deck was overpowered, which this is something we did encounter, one deck was overpowered, we could just say, hey man, let's play again, but this time we'll switch decks. And that's how we kept it fun for everybody. Which was cool. It was a good time. We played a few games. We looked at my collection. We looked online at some stuff I've ordered recently that's not here yet. Oh man, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So that was my morning. Part of me wants to be back in my office to play more games. I'm not gonna lie. Because I didn't get to play any video games, and that's typically my video game time. I was happy to spend it with my boy. We had a great time together, but I'm usually like, hey, wait a second, I play video games during this time. What happened to my video game time? I kind of want to reinstall La Mulana. You guys remember that game, La Mulana? I'm not sure of the origin of La Mulana. I don't know if it was a freeware game first or if it was a WiiWare game first or something like that, but a game sold on a lot of different platforms, and it looks like La Mulana 2 is getting ready to come out. So, I kind of want to reinstall that old game and just give it a run and see what I remember. Talk about a hard game. That was a hard game. Side-scrolling, platforming, mostly puzzle-based. But in order to proceed, you had to uncover the secrets, right? So you had to be good at finding secrets and gathering clues. That was a hardcore game. But I enjoyed it. And thankfully I never once looked at a walkthrough, so it hasn't been ruined for myself either. La Mulana. I have that in my Steam collection. I want to reinstall that and give it another go. That would fit perfectly with the whole deep dive thing that I'm trying to accomplish right now. Of not spending any money on video games. So, usually at the end of these things, I'm not quite sure if this is going to be the end yet or not, but usually at the end of these things I ask, hey man, if I wasn't in the car right now, if I was back at home, what would I be playing? And I think that in this situation, that question becomes a little bit more pertinent. Partially because that's all I can think about. And that would be it. I'd play La Mulana, but I wouldn't just play it, all right? I'd get out my arcade stick. I'd play it with an arcade stick. Not with any arcade stick. I'd play it with my PS4 Kanba Obsidian, which was a $200 freaking stick. And I can't believe I haven't made a video about that thing because it's an awesome stick. And here's why I would do it that way. About a year ago, couple years back, when I first built the Panzer, when I first built my new computer, right? I didn't have Windows. I saved money by doing the operating system last, and I installed Linux. That's how I got into Linux. And during that time, my Steam collection was extremely limited. I had access to a good number of games, It was something like, I think I had like 1,400 games in my collection at the time. Now it's closer to 800. And of those 1,400, I think it was like maybe 250 games I could play that were Linux compatible. So I played all the way through Cave Story with the arcade stick that I had at the time, which was a Canbach Q1, a budget stick, but a good stick nonetheless. Those things go for about $60, and they're worth it. Especially if you don't have if you don't have an arcade stick or a fight stick, and you really want one, Canbach Q1 or Canbach's $60 stick is whatever their budget bracket stick is a good way to go. I played all the way through Cave Story with that fight stick. I didn't think that a fight stick or an arcade stick would be good for a platformer, but I don't know. I don't know if it was Cave Story's fluid controls, because that's a game that controls really well, or if it was the arcade stick that was really well that we put together. But it didn't take me long to get used to it, and I knocked that whole game out with that arcade stick. So now I know La Mulana is a very different game from Cave Story. It's much less forgiving. The controls are a little stiffer. You have to be more on point. But I want to give it a shot. All right, it's been a couple years since that happened. Since I played through Cave Story that way, I think it's time to dust off my my Indiana Jones cap and my brown leather jacket for parading around in the jungle. Dust those off and go on another adventure. I think it's about time. What do you guys think? I'll tell you one thing. That arcade stick, the Obsidian, that thing needs a video of its own, because that is a gorgeous stick. It's like a super high-end piece of equipment in an office full of like mid-tier and low-card equipment. It's really funny and kind of out of place how nice it is. Speaking of the origins of my video game equipment, Steam released some news that it's no longer going to be supporting Windows XP. And when I say no longer supporting, I don't mean, oh, well, you can use it, but there's no guarantee. I mean they're shutting off all Steam access to Windows XP computers, which is bizarre to me. I don't see the reason to do that. It doesn't affect me a whole lot because I left my Windows XP computer behind a long time ago. It doesn't really get used anymore, but I do have one that functions. My Steam collection started on a Windows XP computer. The first Steam game I ever got was the original Counter-Strike, and I played it on a Windows XP computer. It was an old E-Machines computer that my family got a hold of in 2007. I remember distinctly having only like 11 games or 12 games in my Steam collection and thinking it was, oh my gosh, so many games. 10 or 12 games. I can't imagine what I'm going to do with all these Steam games. I had, I got into Steam right around my birthday, which is early March. Got Counter-Strike, and then shortly after getting Counter-Strike, QuakeCon happened for that year, and I was able to get the entire Quake collection for $12. And I know QuakeCon happens every year, but I don't think I've ever seen that deal again since then. So then I had Quake 1, 2, 3, and then I had Counter-Strike. I found my CD copy of Half-Life and I registered the key, so that unlocked Team Fortress Classic. That unlocked Deathmatch Classic. It would have unlocked Counter-Strike if I hadn't already bought it. And then I bought Magic the Gathering Duels of the Planeswalkers, which I could not run at the time. And that there was my Steam library for a long time on my Windows XP computer. And that was 8 years ago. So now that Steam's going to shut down on that computer, it kind of makes me worry a little bit, because it's like the whole time I was buying Steam games, every now and then I'd run into somebody who would say, yeah, well, you get this Steam game as long as Valve doesn't ever shut down. And I would say, there's no reason to think Valve as a company will shut down anytime soon. They seem to be doing very well for themselves. This is like a good deal. But now, I realize it's not just Valve shutting down that you have to worry about. It's Valve closing off access to your collection. Suppose that, it's not too out there to think that they could do this to Windows 7, a few months down the line. I was using Windows 7 on my main computer as recently as like 2 months ago. And I have a backup computer that still uses it, that I still use to access Steam regularly. Right? So, yeah, that would be a disaster. A disaster that's entirely feasible. And thus, that's why it's useful or important that if you're going to purchase video games online, you got to diversify a little bit. Maintain a GOG account. Maintain EA Origins if that's your thing. All of those companies, because you never know what's going to happen. I still have that computer too. I still got that Windows 7 or Windows XP rig. I kind of wanted to. I've had this idea to do a video for a while, or be like, "Hey, Steam running on a Windows XP computer. Let's check it out." I made it happen. I know that it works. And there's so many games on Steam that would run perfect on a Windows XP computer, right? Secret Agent, Commander Keen, those types of games. I was talking about this with Alex Swingle from The Next Round yesterday morning, and he was making the point that, some of those games are actually going to run better on your old XP computer because that's what they were designed for. They're going to look better on the old monitors. They're going to run better on the old hardware. It's just going to be a better experience that we're going to miss out on now. I had, in my Steam categories, I maintain a category that says Old Monitor Collection, and it is the collection of games designed to be played on the old computer. That way, if I load up Steam on the old rig, I could just go right to the games that work for it, instead of having to pick them out of a big list. I don't know, I'm sad to see that feature go. I think it's really disconcerting. I think it's more irritating than it should be, considering I never actually used Steam from a Windows XP computer in practical usage. Doesn't matter, I still should be able to. So that about wraps it up for the Vancast for today. It's a really introspective time, the deep dive. It really... I feel like it's something that's good to do every once in a while. Just deep dive for a month, deep dive for a couple of weeks. Stop buying new stuff, really dig into your collection and understand what you have, understand what has been ignored in your collection for however long. Because I'll tell you what, that is always going to be the case. Whenever you do a deep dive, it's going to be like, man, I ignored this game. I've had this game and I haven't really been playing it. I kind of want to go back to the Atari 2600. You guys remember how on fire I was for the Atari last month? When there was a new Atari unboxing every week, twice a week sometimes, on my channel. I think I might even have an Atari unboxing that never made it up. But those were good times. I know Sequest was a big deal when I opened that. That was a big deal because I wanted to beat Duke from the Cartridge Club at his high score, and I only really sat down with that game twice. So if nothing else, Sequest is definitely worth playing. My Atari collection got really oversized. It was weird. It's a weird thing when your collection gets too big. I don't know if you guys ever have this happen where it's like, if you have 5 games of any given system, you'll switch between the 5 games and it'll be great. You got some variety, you're doing just fine. But when that 5 games becomes 50 games, it becomes overwhelming, and I find it difficult to pick out a game and start playing. I see that happening with my Atari collection. I don't know if everybody else is like that. I know babies are like that. This is a real thing. If you give a baby one toy, I saw this with my daughter. She would play with the toy and be just happy, and you could say, you could have a good old time. If you give a baby an entire basket of toys, empty it out on the carpet, she's not going to know what to do with it because it's too much. She wouldn't have the organizational skills, as a very young child. And I see that with myself and my video games, right? That's one of the reasons why it's like, oh boy, hang on a second, drive time. Yeah, good job, buddy. My Sega Master System collection, I've got like maybe 8 games for the Sega Master System. I feel like that collection is in the perfect spot because I've got all different kinds of games. I got a racing game with off-road, not off-road, Hang On. I've got a couple of side-scrolling games, Double Dragon and Altered Beast. I've got Ghostbusters. I've got a small handful of fun games to play, but it's not overwhelming yet. You know what I mean? I got great baseball, which I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. I like great baseball for the Sega Master System. That is an achievement in retro baseball video gaming. And there are a lot of baseball games for the NES, a lot of them, and I think great baseball is the king. But that's just me. And with that, we're almost at the office, boys and girls. We already did the What Would I Play at Home, La Mulana with an arcade stick, that's what I would play. I'll send you guys back there where it's nice and comfortable, where there's video games and snacks. And I'm going to go do my Wednesday at the office. I'll see you there.
You know what? We're gonna go
So
ahead
that's
and make
it,
a
boys
long
and
one.
girls.
We're going back to the van, everybody.
It's
It's gonna be a long
Wednesday
podcast
afternoon.
this week.
90 degrees. Getting ready to... Well, I'm on the road right now, and I went ahead and did it. I opened a second YouTube channel. Now, I've experimented with second channels before. That's not a new concept. Even as far back as like 2000 and maybe 2010, I had a channel called the Cassiopeia Show. I put up like 5 videos, and then I ended up shutting it down. Well, I got the I opened a Magic the Gathering channel today. Now it's not gonna have any videos on it for until I get some new equipment. But I opened the channel, I got it set up, and when I get home, I'm gonna order a brand new webcam that's gonna record in 1080p, and that is going to drastically improve the quality of good old Tiger Claw TV, and it'll make me able to record this new Magic card oriented channel that I want to do. That way I can really experiment with some MTG related videos without putting my small viewer base in jeopardy. Because that's a real thing, man. When I'm subscribed to a channel and suddenly tons of videos start coming out that seem to have nothing to do with me, I understand the need or the urge to hit that unsubscribe button. It happens. So you always want to do your experimenting, your wild experimenting anyway, from a second channel. Unless you're getting ready to make some sort of permanent main channel change. I don't know. Long and short of it is, I'm getting a new camera. Thanks so much to the patrons who hung on through this past month. I'm taking that and then matching it with my own money to get a good solid camera that'll work well. And that's coming as the result of the deep dive, boys and girls, because I didn't blow all my money on just random video games that have a small chance of getting played. Saved it up, getting something good, more equipment, the quality level is going to go up. And let me tell you something else. Today is one of those days where it's like, you know, when you commit to not spending money, you get that urge where it's like, oh man, I really want to get this thing, but I'm not spending money. You know what I mean? Or you want to get something and you can't, or want to get something and you've committed not to. today's that day. I'm feeling that draw. And the reason why is because the building that I just drove away from when I started this recording is just down the block from a thrift store. Not just a thrift store, but two thrift stores. A used bookstore and a Goodwill that's right next to it. Two spots that have been prime in the past for PS2 and Xbox finds. I found both of those things there on a repeated basis. And today, man, walked out of that office, the sun was shining. Those original Xbox games were calling me, brother. They really were. But I'm also super excited about getting an updated camera, getting that push into the I was gonna say into the new generation, but I won't be getting a 4K camera, so not exactly this. Getting the push into the last generation as opposed to being 3 generations ago. So this is me saying thanks, patrons. Even if you don't care about Magic the Gathering, this is me taking your support and trying to give it right back to you in making things better. So, much appreciated. Alright. So, I saw something else neat today that might be worth bringing up, but I know so little about it, it's kind of difficult to talk about. Well, let me back up a step. One thing I've wanted for a while is a good handheld for my gym bag. The reason why I want a handheld for my gym bag is because I go to the gym with my family a lot. And I always end up sitting out in the waiting room while they get ready, while they get changed and whatever. My wife has my daughter, and I have my son, and my son and I finish first, or sometimes it's me waiting for my wife outside the kids' place. There's a lot of waiting that goes on immediately after working out and showering when I'm at the gym. So I wanted to get a handheld for a while. I think I may have talked about this on the air like maybe a month ago, but for a long time I had my eyes set on a Game Boy clone. There are many clone emulation devices that play Game Boy games or mostly GBA and NES games, and a lot of them are, from what I understand, very low quality, right? You'll have fixed ROMs with no access to an SD card to load anything on. You'll have strange duplicate ROMs that won't make any sense. There was one that came out that supposedly had access to an SD card, so you could load ROMs onto it, but it was like $50, and I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger on a $50 item. But there was something that I saw today. I believe it was called like the Clockwork Pi or something like that. And the idea is, it's as it sounds, it's a Linux-based handheld gaming device, but it's essentially it's manufactured in module form, a modular form. So you're getting a screen, and then you're getting a board, and then you're getting a control panel. And if you buy the kit, you put it all together, right? There's a couple things that appeal to me. I mean, it's got Wi-Fi, right, so that I can connect it directly to my rig and do a couple things. And having Linux native access from like a Game Boy like handheld, I think would be neat. As opposed to, say, a cheap Chinese ROM machine, I could actually use this thing to play some legit games that are available on Linux. And I believe it was called the Clockwork Pi, but the Linux gamer, Gardner, this is hilarious. He did an unboxing of one of these things, and what happened was he backed it on Kickstarter, but completely forgot about it. And then got it in the mail and was like, well, I don't remember backing this. I guess let's open it up. What is this? I don't know, but oh man, I wish I could remember buying this thing. Funniest thing. I love that guy. So I saw his video and it captured my imagination. I don't know anything else about it yet, though. As far as I know, it's still not like publicly available for purchase. But I do know that the Kickstarters, at least Gardner has his Kickstarter copy in his hand. So that might be cool. I mean, I was interested in building one of these Raspberry Pi handheld kits as well. So if this thing ends up being anything better than a Raspberry Pi handheld kit, then I'm certainly on board. Based on that little video, it looks like it might be. We'll have to see. And that would be cool for my gym bag. Now, on the other hand, this could be, like $100 or something. I could see that happening easily, $100 plus. And I'm not going to buy a $100 plus handheld for my gym bag. I think I'd rather go back to I don't know. I got some research to do. I got some figuring out to do. But, yeah, so that's a thing. So keep an eye open for my Magic the Gathering channel, which I've just titled CF's Magic the Gathering channel right now. When I do start posting videos, I'll announce it on Tiger Claw TV, and there'll be a link and everything, so you'll be able to find it nice and easy. But for now, until I get my new camera and I get it under wraps, we'll say it's still under construction, like the way they used to say with all websites that were made in the 1990s. Remember the 90s when there were people, this website is under construction, and there'd be like a little roadwork sign or something. Yeah, it's that. It's under construction. And I'll see you guys back in the studio.
All right, boys and girls. Coming up is the last Vancast for the week. I promise. Stick with us on this extra long episode of Tiger Claw Radio. Here we go.
Driving home on a rainy Thursday. Raining again. Can't stop, won't stop. Every single day. Just got finished listening to a little, believe it or not, AM radio. I never really been much of an AM radio guy, I gotta say. When it comes to the radio, for me, I guess for the last, for all of my adulthood, the radio has always been the rock station machine. It's the device we use to tune into to one station, and that's the rock station. Somewhere along the line, probably around 2000, I stopped listening to it because I stopped liking the pool of songs they were picking from, and pretty much just deciding that I didn't have any interest in top 40 rock, top 40 anything, and I wanted to go discover my own music. But recently I was poking around on AM radio, not FM radio, but AM. I always thought of AM radio as like where all the crazy conservative talk is, or like where all the extreme political shows are from either side, regardless of what your political views are. I always hear like old people with very upset pundits answering calls on AM radio. But I actually started checking out some of the local AM broadcasts, and I found some really crazy stuff. There was a local station that has just been playing like late 70s, early 80s tunes, and I'm convinced it's just an iPod that's hooked up to an antenna somewhere that rolls the same station ID, like 10-second station ID clip every 30 minutes or whatever the state mandate is. So that's been kind of interesting to see what else is out there. I remember being a kid, on rare occasion we'd listen to the Orioles game on AM radio, but I only remember doing that like a couple of times. So that's still a thing apparently. So I'll probably end up doing that. It's fun stuff. It takes me back to a day where After listening to the Orioles game on the AM radio, I could wake up the next day with $5, walk into town, which took about 40 minutes, buy a Nintendo game for $5, regardless of what the game was, and then walk home, and that was my weekend. Simple times. Good times. I miss those times. So moving on from AM radio, I want to talk a little bit about SimCity. Now, you guys are probably familiar with my history when it comes to SimCity, but I'll give you a quick recap. My wife has never been much of a gamer type, but every few years she finds a game that she likes in particular and she locks on it. And for a long time ago, SimCity on the Super Nintendo was that game, and then SimCity 4 was that game, and then SimCity 2013 was getting ready to come out, and we got really excited. My wife, who never gets excited about video games, was excited about that one. She's like, man, this is going to be my game. So we went out and bought a laptop special for her to play SimCity 2013. We bought an expensive copy of SimCity 2013 for her. And we opened a second Origin account and bought another expensive copy of SimCity 2013 for me. So this was a game, all in all, we probably spent like $600 on. And then the launch happened. And if you don't remember, the launch of SimCity 2013 was the most disastrous launch of any game I think I've ever experienced. You could probably think of one that tops it, but it was the worst launch I've ever experienced. And that really destroyed the whole franchise. There hasn't been another SimCity game worthy of mention on air since. There's a mobile game out now. That's about it. Well, I recently found out that there was an open version of SimCity 2000. Now I'm in the car, so I don't know I don't have it written in front of me exactly what it was called, but it was like Open SimCity 2K, Open Sim 2K. I don't know, something like that. It used a lot of assets from the original SimCity 2000. It was a faithful rebuild, able to be played on modern machines, and it was a free download. And EA issued their cease and desist, and the game was taken down. Now, I think it's a big loss, especially since I didn't know about this thing until after it was already gone. I think something like that would have been really beneficial. It would have been really like a good thing. But I can't really call EA the bad guy. I mean, well, I guess you can, but this was a game that used their assets, right? They EA had the right, I guess. It just in a franchise that's otherwise dead, that is otherwise dead and buried. It would have been nice to get the franchise out one more time and really have fun with it. Oh, and by the way, I did the math at one point. You know that game Cities Skylines that all the kids are enjoying now when it comes to city builders? If you look at the development cycle of Cities Skylines, development began on that game right after the launch of SimCity 2013. SimCity 2013 came out, and somebody was watching that release and just said, oh, this is a disaster. This is a garbage fire. I can do better than this. And you know what? They did. So goes the legend. I don't know how to feel about the whole thing, to be honest. I was watching something recently about the history of the SimCity franchise. And it's easy to point at EA and call them the bad guy. They do a lot of really bad stuff. But what I didn't know until today was that after SimCity 2000 came out, when Maxis was trying to develop a follow-up for SimCity 2000, the company was in shambles. Their SimCity 3000 prototype was a disaster, and they didn't have the infrastructure. They didn't have the manpower, or their morale was low, whatever the deal was. Maxis in its state at that time could not string it together and deliver a game. So, look, I don't like EA I dislike EA as much as the next guy, but we kind of the games that followed the EA purchase of Maxis, SimCity 3000 and SimCity 4, are some of the best city builders around, especially SimCity 4. So I have kind of conflicting feelings. This idea that EA is like the worst company ever, and then also this thing they did creating SimCity 4 after the purchase of Maxis. And the whole concept that Maxis was in such shambles already before they purchased it. I don't know, I've got conflicting feelings about the whole thing. Maybe if I were to make sense of it, perhaps the release of SimCity 4 was the last of EA in its olden days. Here's another thing that I say quite often. Did you know that EA at one point was like one of the coolest video game companies around? It's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? Look at the EA releases of early computer games. They used to be released in record album cases with their floppy disks. They were one of the coolest companies around. And I guess that distant memory that is what they used to be, what they built their company on, was laid to rest after SimCity 4 was released. Just some food for thought. Now, thinking what I would do if I were back home, I'm recalling early this morning. My son got up early and played Magic the Gathering with me for a couple of hours before I got ready for work again. Just like yesterday, it was a great time. And then when I had to get ready, the time came for me to get the old tie on and start getting it together, he sat in my office and played my old Game Boy Advance SP, sitting on the couch, just going through a couple of games. I put in Namco Museum for him. I chose Namco Museum because the games are simple. You can play for a few minutes and then be done. I didn't want to give him something that he wouldn't want to put down when I had to leave. And he loaded up Pole Position. That was his choice game on Namco Museum for the Game Boy Advance SP. And I got to explain the concept of pole position to my son. And that's interesting to think back. Some of these games that have been around forever. A game that has been, as long as I remember games, I remember Pole Position. The first arcades I ever remember seeing, I can't remember. I can think of a couple of arcades when I was young. Most notably, Putt-Putt Golf at an arcade. Every arcade I can remember in those days had Pole Position. So as long as I can remember arcades, I can remember this game. And it's the first time I had to try to explain Pole Position to somebody who's never played it. Thankfully, he'd played Hang On my Sega Master System, so was somewhat familiar with the idea of a sprite-based sort of chase cam racing game. Didn't really take with him, to be honest. He played it a few times. He tried to get the gear shifting down, couldn't quite hack it, and he let it go. He ended up moving on to Mario Kart. I don't blame him. Going from Pole Position to Mario Kart with the Game Boy Advance SP, quite a jump. Quite a jump indeed. Just a little moment in the gaming history of his life that I thought I'd share with you guys. And if I were back home right now, I probably wouldn't have a whole lot of time for games because I'd be going to rejoin my family and get dinner together. So I'd probably play something small. I'd probably fire up the Atari and run a game of Space Invaders. But realistically, if I were to play my Atari, I would be playing one of whatever cartridges happen to be sitting next to my Atari. And what those games are, I can't think of off the top of my head. I know Mountain King is there. Mountain King would be fun to play. But I would play Atari. That's an interest that I built entirely on not having a whole lot of time to play video games, but wanting to play them anyway. That's my Bandcast for this rainy Thursday afternoon. I'll see you guys back in the studio.
The time has come. You know what time it is, guys. It's time for the Bandcast. This is the time where we take advantage of the fact that it's a small program, small little podcast. Just me here, just you here, even after all these years. But we can take advantage of that by coming together and making this attainable. So if you want to reach out to me, you can head over to YouTube, or you can head over to thenextround.net or tigerclawtv.com. Just let me know what you think. All right. Oops. Sorry about that. So the first one is from Hemrock, and he writes, this is a really good one. He goes, "Hey CF, you asked a while back concerning the durability of the start button on the SNES controller. I seem to have vague recollections that perhaps my friend had a Super Nintendo controller with a start button that did not typically work unless you pressed it with diamond generating pressure, though I'm not sure about that memory. It may have been a controller for a different system. Regardless, most if not all SNES controllers that I have used did not have start button issues." Alright, I'm going to stop this email right there so that I can make the font a lot bigger and easier to read. Yeah, I remember that as well. Controllers having that same issue with Super Nintendo and no other system. So I'm inclined to think, I can't tell you if that really happened or not, but I can tell you it's a plausible situation. Let's get back to the email. In regards to retro game prices, on a previous episode of TCR, you felt that NES prices had not come down. However, it was actually prices on the NES games where I noticed the downtrend. Pat the NES Punk noted a similar observation on the CU podcast. But I also suppose that retro game prices are regional to a certain degree, so NES prices may still be on the high side where you live. It has come to my attention that Steam will no longer support Windows XP in approximately 150 days. This is a shame, as I use an old Windows XP machine to play some of my games. In particular, I use it to play Morrowind. I am hoping that after they drop support, I can still log in offline and enjoy titles I purchased. I suppose I have to download and install all the ones I want before then. This feels like Wii Virtual Console all over again. What happens to games that only support Windows XP OS? All right, let's answer a couple of these questions. First, the NES thing. I really have no idea about NES prices. I've bought the only game that I've bought from the NES that I can really think of off the top of my head was Pro Wrestling, and then I bought Pro Wrestling, and then I bought some ROM hacks. But you can't really use ROM hacks as a barometer for what the prices should be. That's really great to hear that they're coming down, because I would like to get a few more NES games. My collection is more or less complete. Back when you sent me Spy Hunter was really the last great game that I really wanted to have that I didn't have. There's many more great games that I don't have. Like, I only have 2 of the 6 Mega Man games, right? So that's a few more, whatever. But I think that was the last absolute must-have. But it's awesome to hear that prices are going down. Prices are going down, and it will be nice after buying so many Atari games to buy an NES game and have it feel like it's cutting edge again. That'll be really nice. As far as Steam not being on XP anymore, here's a question. If you have an old Windows XP computer, how do you feel about potentially using like Puppy Linux on it? Because if they stop working, if they stop using Steam on Windows, it'll still work for Linux. And you were the one that taught me you can get Morrowind, your Steam copy of Morrowind, working on Linux. It takes some fidgeting, but we both know it can be done. As far as what happens to games that only support XP, I don't know. I really don't. I will tell you this. When I finally adopted Windows 10, I found that a lot of the things that I thought were not going to work actually did. So I think a lot of those games that weren't working, I think a lot of the games that weren't working are working now. But apart from that, if they just don't work anymore, then I guess they just don't work anymore. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know what will happen. Maybe we'll see a bunch of games get removed from the Steam store. But let's get back to the email and see what else we got. For Magic the Gathering, I've heard that it's cheaper in the long run just to buy singles and not the booster packs. You spoke about getting one of those big boxes of commons and uncommons. I think it would be fun to have a big draft with some people and just play with the random cards that came from the box. You should give MTG Online a try. It's probably cheaper and most certainly easier to find someone to play with. I went ahead and installed Magic 2012 on my Windows XP computer just so that I have it on there before the Steamocalypse drops XP support. All right, let's break and address this. Magic Online. Okay. All right, Hemrock. When I first made the decision to get back into Magic the Gathering, I wasn't interested in doing Magic Online, but that has changed in the last couple days. You talked to me about it. You said it was about $20 and you could get into it. And I found the MTG Goldfish video where he breaks it down. You mentioned that, I think, in another email as well. I am all about it now. I found, because right now I'm trying to build a deck, a standard base deck that follows the standard rule set so that I can go to Magic the Gathering, or Friday Night Magic, right? That's the live event that everyone goes to. I really want to do that. But while shopping for like a deck list to follow, as my first deck, I figured I'd just use somebody else's shopping list. You can see, okay, this deck is about $50 to get all the cards one at a time in paper format, or you can get the entire deck for $3.50 on MTG Online. That's what's getting me, brother. I'm gonna do the paper game, but I'm thinking I might drop the $20 just to open that door. If nothing else, I can pay the extra $3.50 to get the digital copy and then test it out and see if it's worth chasing the $50 down, or whatever it is for decks. So yeah, I haven't bought it yet, but I'm all about it. I'm definitely gonna give Magic the Gathering Online a try. As a matter of fact, this morning I installed a couple of those Duels of the Planeswalkers games from Steam from about 2011 to 2013. I didn't play 2012. I think it was 2013, but I'll reinstall that as well so that we can play that. That'd be great, because I'm all about it, man. All about the Magic the Gathering right now. Let's get back to the email. He writes, are you still running Linux? If so, what distro? Do you know that Manjaro has surpassed Linux Mint as the #1 distro on DistroWatch? I'm running Linux Mint 18 as my main OS, but I've had issues. Namely that it's slow compared to my other OSs by a pretty good margin too. Even Windows XP boots up faster. Also, I was trying to get a Windows game to play on Linux using Wine, and according to the interwebs, it was supposed to work. I think my problem was with Linux Mint. It would not let me get the most recent version of Wine. Weird. Yeah, I'm not running Linux at the moment because I had to trash everything in order to make way for Windows 10. I still have a partition that is not being used. It's just sitting dormant. And that is the partition I'm going to use for Linux. The version I'm going to use, because it's a 500 gigabyte partition, it's not the hugest thing in the world. It's one I installed by accident on my secondary computer when I first built it. And it's called LXLE. And it's one of those lightweight distros. And the reason why I like it is because it's so... The interface, well, first of all, lightweight, right? Lightweight and a small partition. It fits perfectly. And it's just so backwards compared to Windows. It's one of those where like the start button equivalent is in the upper left-hand side by default. And there's no sidebar. It's like a top bar and a bottom bar, and it's very different. It feels like a different OS. I noticed that when I was running Linux Mint, dual booting with Windows, I would open it up and I'm like, this kind of feels just like just like Windows. I kind of wished it felt a little different. So I decided to go with LXLE because I wanted something slim. I picked that over Debian. I'd considered doing Debian, but I had a lot of trouble trying to install Debian last time. So that's my partition, my thing. I'm gonna set that up so that I can do a Linux show at some point. As a matter of fact, I talked about running a regular Linux series, and my #1 piece of news that I was gonna talk about on my pilot episode was Manjaro overtaking Linux Mint in the distro watch top hits. Because I remember back when, around the time I was first adopting, you were telling me you didn't like Manjaro, right? Remember that? You said it felt weird. I booted it up at one point, and it struck me as one of those distributions that's designed more for people who are familiar with Apple or Mac or whatever, rather than like a former Windows user. It appealed to me because of the rolling release. I had troubles with the Linux Mint release schedule. At least when I was on 17. When you were on 17, you had to install an entirely new operating system to move up. But by now you can just do update from the update manager, and it'll push you up to the latest version, and you get to keep all your data and everything. So it's not as hard as it used to be. But yeah, I'm behind in my Linux stuff, and I got to be honest. The Linux stuff has given way a little bit in lieu of Magic the Gathering, but we'll see. I'm gonna have a busy time at work all through September and most of August, so I'll probably launch my Linux series in the middle of October, when things calm down, and I'll be under less stress. Let's get back to the email. Excuse me. He writes, cheap Sega Saturn game recommendation of the week. Oh, I like that. Disclaimer, I've not played this game, but it's been on my radar, and I've heard good things. So here you go. Baku Baku. It's a Tetris-styled puzzle game with different types of blocks falling from above. You must sort out the blocks in such a way as to remove them from the field. The blocks are either food or animals. Match up the right animal to the right food, and you create a combo that eliminates those pieces from the game. All right, sounds good. Don't let the blocks touch the top of the screen or you lose. If you're patient, you can find a disc-only copy for about $15. All right, Hemrock, here's a question for you. Do you think that game is more or less appealing than Grid Runner? I'm taking a break from purchasing games, but Grid Runner is what's on my radar right now for the Sega Saturn, and I think you mentioned that one the last time we shared emails. Let's get back to his email and see what else he's got to say. Upcoming retro Nintendo Switch titles. Okami HD drops August 9th. Data East's Nitro Ball shows up August 16th. Mega Man 11 releases October 2nd. Technically not retro, but you get the idea. Oh yeah, brother. I'm interested in Mega Man 11 for sure. He goes on. Ever thought of doing some more Morrowind vids? What's your favorite Final Fantasy game? What are your top 5 games for the original Xbox? Take care. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Got some really good questions here. Let's talk about Morrowind. The Morrowind series actually did a lot of damage to my channel. Every time one of those videos came out, people unsubscribed. And admittedly, by the end of the Monday Night Morrowind series, they were getting really bad. I would just play, and, I maybe talk a little bit, maybe not. There was a lot of just aimless walking around. But I really like the game, and I really like making those videos. And you never know. I did one sort of one-shot Return to Morrowind like a long time ago, and that did okay. So I think what I would do is, rather than do like a Monday Night Morrowind weekly show, I would do it monthly, but it would be like a bunch of sittings edited down with some of the boring, difficult to watch portions taken out. I think that would be a better way to go. But I think it would be fun to do. It would be fun to do some sort of thing with Morrowind again. I ended up reinstalling it after I read this email for the first time, so you never know. You never know. I think it might be, especially if I can get it, if I get LXLE installed, and I can get it up and running from Linux. I think that might be fun. All right, what's your favorite Final Fantasy game? Okay. There's a lot of Final Fantasy games. Probably all time, I would say Final Fantasy IX. It was the only one I ever bought new, and it was such a huge staple in gaming for me when that came out. I think Final Fantasy VII is probably the Final Fantasy VII isn't my favorite, but it's a close second, because it was just a huge, when Final Fantasy VII came out, that was like everything changed. With that one game, everything changed. And third, in a very close third place is Final Fantasy Adventure Legend 3 for the Game Boy. The one where there's like a jar that's pouring water on the world and you can travel backward and forward in time. That's also a really awesome game. And top 5 games for the original Xbox. Okay, I took a break from recording for about 2 minutes and looked at my shelves and compiled a 5-item list. In no particular order, they are Counter-Strike for the original Xbox, which is a highly underrated port of the original Counter-Strike. The only problem being it doesn't have CS Office, which was my favorite map. The original Morrowind is number one on my radar. I can't really say that's my favorite because I haven't played the Xbox version, but man, I want Morrowind for the Xbox. Morrowind, even with all the shortcomings that game has on the Xbox, it's still Morrowind. Then we got DOA 3. Now here's the thing, DOA for the Xbox. There's several entries into that series, and I think they're all worth owning, including DOA Beach Volleyball, just because, man, what a game changer! What a game that changed everything. It made people upset. You know, DOA Beach Volleyball has got its place in history. But representing the series, if I had to pick one, I would say DOA 3. And then also, speaking of entire series being represented by a single game, Halo 2. Halo is another one that should be number one, right? If I were to put these in an order. And I'm holding a copy of Halo Combat Evolved that I purchased in order to play with the Cartridge Club. But while I was waiting for that to arrive, I got hooked on Halo 2, and that was what I ended up playing. So I played a lot of Halo 2 actually pretty recently, and that's a great game to own. Finally, we have a game that shouldn't be on this list, but it is due to sentimental reasons, and that's the original Ghost Recon. Ghost Recon, squad-based shooter, a lot of open space. It felt revolutionary when I played it for the first time, even though back in the day, I would say it was. Ghost Recon's a good game. It's a fun game. They make better games now. They make better squad-based shooters now. But the original Ghost Recon is just something special. So that's 5 games for you. Counter-Strike, Morrowind, DOA 3, Halo 2, Ghost Recon. Hemrock, as always, thanks for the email, man. I got a lot of really good content out of reading those emails. Now, my friends, I'm going to head over to YouTube. We'll see what we got. Bear with me. My ever-shrinking channel is loading. Alright, here we go. Tiger Claw Radio 245, Computers Unlimited. That was last week. I seem to remember there being a couple of comments. Here we go. Yeah, Desm101. He writes, I haven't done a gaming deep dive for too long. My current game time is spent usually playing something different every day. So there are several RPGs that are still in the first few hours of play. Yeah, me too, brother. And then I'm often going back to shooters like Gradius 2, trying to beat it. Last night I actually finished Thunder Force 3, so I'll probably move on to Lightning Force. And then he puts a time signature for 40 minutes and 20 seconds. I've played some Pinball Quest for the NES. Definitely a great concept with the RPG/adventure angle, but very difficult to get too far. I have yet to check out Rollerball. I think I'll need to pick that one up. Oh, Desm. Desm, if you have any interest in pinball, and based on the stuff you sent me, I have to think you did at one point. Rollerball is the best pinball game on the yeah, I'd say it's the best pinball game on the Nintendo. I know people love the Pinbot, but Rollerball, oh my gosh. Oh man, there's way more detail and action, at least than the original Famicom/Nintendo pinball, Black Box Pinball. And Black Box Pinball was a good game, don't get me wrong. But Rollerball is where it's at, brother. I would check that one out. Just give it a little peek-see. Just a little look. Let's see. We got one. Thanks for commenting, by the way. I appreciate it. There's so few these days. I appreciate it. I appreciate the few people who are still listening and throwing me a few words. Much obliged. Next up is What's on My Game Shelf, who released a video that I liked recently about going through all his old magazines and comic books and stuff looking for video game ads. I put that up on TigerClawTV.com if you guys want to check it out. He had some really good stuff. It was a long video, but definitely some good stuff. So he writes, I feel you on the KDL trade story. However, I was on the opposite side of a trade like that. That's right, I was the evil, selfish young kid. To top it off, it was my cousin. I feel horrible about it now. I even then I knew I was doing something wrong. But I thought I could get through it. And here I am, sculpted by my past, full of unscrupulous dealings, plucking the splinters out of other people's eyes. I feel like bringing it up when I see my cousin next, but I want to chicken out. He's married and has kids. He probably doesn't remember, or would think I'm weird for bringing up some dumb kid moment 20 to 30 years ago. That's what I keep telling myself to save me the shame. Enlighten me. Why would Gearbox pull Death Rally? They probably have the rights to Duke, but they aren't making money from the sales on Steam. If not, the rights deal they negotiated excludes Death Rally. Alright, I'm going to take a quick break so I can answer that question. And the question is, I'm not sure why they would pull Death Rally, but I do know once they acquired the rights to Duke Nukem, they pulled everything that had Duke Nukem in it. Everything else. That included Duke Nukem Megaton Edition, which was making money at the time, and that included Balls of Steel, which was a pinball game starring Duke Nukem, which I doubt was making money at the time. So it looked like they were just removing everything so they could put their own products. Shortly after, we saw Duke Nukem World Tour, which was just another port of Duke Nukem 3D. We never saw Balls of Steel again. That game went extinct, along with the original two side-scrollers, Duke Nukem and Duke Nukem 2, which were previously on sale on Steam. I know those had a surge in popularity when they first came out on Steam, and then I think it tapered off. But yeah, all that stuff. Duke Nukem, the Manhattan Project, that one also got removed. Everything came down. So that's why I would have suspected. Well, we came pretty close to losing Death Rally. That's what got me to think that. I don't think it's. I agree with you. I think there was nothing to gain by pulling it down, but I also think there was nothing to gain by pulling down Balls of Steel, the pinball game, starring Duke Nukem. But it happens, unfortunately. So let's get back to the email. He writes, when it comes to writing simple Windows applications with a GUI, I always use C# and MS Visual Studio. They make building GUIs as easy as drag and drop. There's even alignment with snapping options built in, so you can make the dialogue or window look nice. I own a full registered copy, but if you don't want to go that way, there's a freeware option called Visual Studio Express. I've never used it, but I believe it offers the same GUI building tools that are in the full version. Sweet. If you like hybridizations of ball games with other genres, look into. I was laughing at the word balls. Jeez Louise. That's how you can tell I'm getting tired. But I believe, hybridization into ball games with other genres. Look into Fire Striker on the SNES. Similarly, there's a Pop and Smash and a Scenario Smash Ball. Sanrio Smash Ball. Excuse me, I read that wrong. There's also Action Pachinko games and Pachi Slotland. Now, I like Pachinko. Pachinko I like very much. I got a few Pachinko games for the Famicom, which I enjoyed. Especially the I wanted to say the third Pachinko game, but it doesn't give you much of a point of reference. I think it's called Pachikun on the Famicom, and it's a series, Pachikun 1, 2, and 3. And then by the end of it, you play as a walking, talking Pachinko ball in like an RPG-style Pachinko parlor, and you can walk up to the different Pachinko machines and play them. It's really cool. And then finally, he signs off his email with paddle controllers for the win. Yeah, I got to get one of those. When I come out of my deep dive, I don't know. I'm not trying to set any goals for myself because I might want to go back to collecting for the Sega Saturn. I don't know. I just got a new camera to bolster the quality, the picture quality of Tiger Claw TV, and that came in the mail today, and I'm looking at it right now. And my deep dive will continue for a couple more weeks to help recover the funds from this purchase. So hopefully we'll see some HD videos come out of it, which would be nice. Man, thanks for the comment. Thank you for the recommendations as well. Oh, you know what? I skipped a line. He also writes, it sounds like there's some issues with your 2600 system. You should clean the teeth on the cartridge slot and see if that helps boot those games more reliably. Also, clean the games, of course. Here's a question for you. Is it worth it to try and open and clean the first-party Atari games that lock shut when you pull them out of the system? I haven't done much Atari cleaning. I clean my Activision games and my third-party games that have exposed circuit boards. But it's difficult. I know there's a trick to getting in there, but it's difficult with the first-party Atari games because they lock shut. But, yeah, I guess I could use a good cleaning. Cleaning the system wasn't something I've pursued, and through all the time I've owned that thing, I've never actually looked into getting it cleaned. I should figure that out. Well, boys and girls, that's it. Whatever has brought you here, 1 hour and 35 minutes and 10 seconds. And man, oh man, long episode, and thanks for sticking with me. I value the time that you guys choose to spend with me above other places. There are so many things that we could be doing, so many ways we could be spending our time, but you've chosen to spend it here with me, and I appreciate that. So I like to wish you guys well. Just take a minute to say, whatever's coming at you this next week, stay strong. Keep at it, face it head on. Head on, that's how you get through it. And that's what I'm going to do, and I'll see you on the other side. I'm rooting for you. See you next Monday.